Welcome everyone to another Eye of the Serpent Tarot pick a card reading. Today we're going to be looking at what your spiritual gifts are. And so the way that I'll be interpreting the cards and the way that I'm looking at them will be kind of different to the norm, because I'll be really just focusing on what are the sorts of energies, the type of channels or ways that you can use energy and the different ways that you're most connected to, what you most resonate to, around what your spiritual gifts are, what psychic energy you may have, what manifestation energy you may have, those sorts of things. So we're going to have a look at largely spiritually based decks and concepts as we go through here. And the idea is at the end, hopefully you'll have a sense about what are the main ways that you might be able to channel, use and help yourself and help others with your spiritual gifts. As always, you can choose more than one deck if you want, because you may have more than one particular grouping of spiritual gifts. So work out what ones you resonate to from pile 1, 2 or 3 and look at one or more depending upon that. And also, as always, tarot is not about a fixed thing. You know, you have the choice, and if something is not resonating as what you would like your spiritual gifts to be, it's all about development. We can develop any of those sorts of gifts, and so you can focus on how to develop others. But this is really picking up what you've probably already developed over lifetimes or that you have a natural tendency for. So hopefully it'll be an interesting and different sort of reading, and one that could be quite fun, and I'll walk you through it as we do it and the sort of concepts we're dealing with. But just have a look at the piles and work out which one you want at them to help you. There are pyramid crystals. There's a bloodstone on pile 1, a jasper on pile 2, and a dragon blood on pile 3. So that might help some people get that sense about where they feel intuitively connected. If you're not sure now, even after this introduction, that's fine. Just pause the video, contemplate it. You know, use your psychic and spiritual energy to intuitively connect to which deck or decks you think fit you, and I'll see you in your reading. Welcome, pile 1. So what we're going to do firstly is, as you would have seen, I have a card from the White Light Oracle, and that was the one that had the crystal sitting on top of it that you chose. And that's to give a bit of an overarching sense of how you might spiritually manifest some of your spiritual gifts and a touchstone for the whole reading. You chose Deer of Delta. The Deer of Delta is a symbol of shamanic ability. It's you are naturally gentle. You are naturally able to go into that place for regeneration and for healing. So you are someone who can go to the depths, and particularly the Delta frequency is around deep sleep, around that space that we come to in dreams and in our sleep cycle that is deeply healing, deeply regenerative. You are probably someone who has very interesting dreams. You may have, in fact, the capacity to lucid dream. If you haven't already tried that, you could develop those skills, I think, fairly easily. And you may, in fact, already do quite a lot of meditation, work in meditation groups, or even, as I say, on a shamanic level. A large part of your spiritual gifts in this lifetime are around healing, both healing of yourself and healing of others. And it could, depending upon what other cards we see, manifest in things like herbalism and healing in that more sort of physical sense. But I think a lot of this will also be about spiritual healing, emotional healing, bringing people out of shadow and so forth. So, and you are able to do it for yourself as well. But what always happens with shamanism is in going through that, you could sometimes have faced some pretty dark things yourself. There's always a process, if you went through full-blown shamanism, of spiritually almost seeming to die, to regenerate. So you may well have had dreams that are quite extreme along those lines, but it's all about regeneration. It's not about death. It's not about loss. It's actually about the regeneration, the transformative power of spiritual growth, and in particular things like shamanism. And your gentle nature, pile 1, your way of healing and dealing with people, even if you haven't done anything like that yet, you will be the sort of person who in your friendship circle, in your work circle, in your love relationships, has a natural healing presence, can help people deal with really traumatic situations. You're just basically a peacemaker and a healer on at least some level. So given that, let's have a look at what your tarot cards say about your abilities. Okay, for a start, this is really underlining pile one, what I got there. I mean, I don't say things like shamanism lightly because it's a very powerful spiritual path. So if you haven't actually become a shaman, and I imagine most of you probably haven't, that ability doesn't come out of nowhere. And you've got two major arcana cards here, which show, I think, a strength and a development. You're not new to this in some way, even if it's not been something you thought about in other lives, but even potentially in this life you have developed that a lot. You've always been someone who could help people make decisions from information that's coming from beyond, and there's a real sense of hope, and again a real sense of regeneration around that. It's a very powerful thing. With the High Priestess here, pile one, you are a natural psychic. You are naturally connected to the hidden realms. I think that probably many people sense that about you, even if, as I say, they meet you through much more conventional means. It's very much in that kind of hidden shadow communication type of style. It's possible that you may, as I say, do some of this in the sort of more material world. When you've got the Two of Pentacles there is a sense of balance on a material level. So some of you may manifest this in things like, as I say, herbalism, sort of alternative healing modalities, with this sort of energy, Reiki, kinesiology, those sorts of things. You may well do that, or be a natural adept to it if you were to look into it. I do feel like you've brought in stuff from lifetimes. There's a sense beyond this of alchemy to me that connects with shamanism, but the alchemical process, people talked about it as being turning base metal into gold, but that's really a spiritual allegory. It's about taking the base matter of our soul when we're in the manifest world and reconnecting that to the divine. There is a process that you go through, very similar to what shaman go through that I described at the beginning, which is that all the constituent elements of somebody's soul, their spirit, and what they're doing in the world are brought together, almost in a chemist lab. That's the sort of imagery we have. And it goes through a process called the Negredo, which is where everything is sort of burnt down to its constituent parts, like burnt down and transformed. And out of that comes various symbols like a peacock, a white rose. There's a development, and it's about finding what they call the philosopher's stone for that process, which is really the alchemical process, the spiritual connection to the divine. It's a very complicated thing, but it is about transformation. So because of your knowledge, pile one, because of your connection, and I think almost a scholarly understanding of this you may have had in other lives, if not in this life, but I think for many of you it probably is in former lives. You bring all that in with you. You were probably the sort of child that everybody thought, is that imaginary friend really an imaginary friend, or is there someone really there? You had that kind of fey, otherworldly thing about you right from the beginning, but you were not sort of off in the stratosphere and unable to connect to people. You're very grounded, but you can almost live in two worlds. I'm getting, for some of you, you kind of almost live in two worlds, and that's part of the Two of Pentacles there. So at any given time, you may be connecting with the divine, with the spiritual realms, with other dimensions, and also in this realm. Some of you, because of that, may deal with healing issues of your own. You may deal with different forms of psychological challenge, and I don't mean by that on any level that you're not stable. I think you are stable, but you may be someone who does have altered states of consciousness on occasion. There's nothing to be frightened of if that's the case. Certainly, obviously, get whatever therapeutic support is available around that, but you naturally are a healer yourself. and part of it is just about your capacity to do that. The other thing that I'm getting is, there's a lot of electrical energy coming through the star there. So I think there's a lot that channels down to you from the divine, from your guides, because you give a lot. There's a lot of giving in this energy. And when that occurs, you do need to take time out for yourself, because you do need to heal and regenerate. Without meaning to, people who may come to you either consciously or unconsciously for healing, support, emotional help, do drain you a bit, because it's natural. It's always an exchange of energy, and you give a lot, pile one. So make sure that you take that time out. The High Priestess, by her nature, needs to take time out, because she does connect with both worlds, and you do that very, very strongly. My pile one people, as I say, are not new to this. You have a sense and a connection to the other dimensions, and it's natural to you, but because of what that means in terms of what you give to other people, you really do need to be careful about your energy. So I'm going to pull out another couple of cards from another tarot deck, just to see if there's any further advice or information on a tarot level, or any other sort of ways that this manifests. But at the moment, I'm largely seeing it in the healing space, in the material world, but in that interconnection to the other dimensions and the spiritual world, pretty much at all times with you, and a lot in your dreams. So let's see what else we get. Okay, so the Page of Pentacles and the Four of Wands. So part of what I'm looking at here, just so that you understand what I'm talking about, is that I think that the different suits in the tarot bring different sorts of predominant energy around them, and the Pentacles very much, and you've already had that, is about manifestation. It's about the material world. Again, I do feel it is around healing, but with the Page there is a capacity for you to take this to a business level if you want, to really, really create something, or even come up with something quite new, a different approach to healing, or you definitely at least at adept level, and I would say higher with the High Priestess, with this through many lifetimes. But everything for you is material on some level. You are not someone who just goes, okay, I'm going to believe everything in the spiritual world. You do like to see a confirmation. So again, if you have a dream that feels prophetic, then if it actually comes into being, then you're going to go, okay, I can connect that. That's not just my imagination. So you always need that. Even though you have such natural power, you also have a very good understanding about how that needs to be grounded. You also connect a lot with other people. There is an energy exchange. So that's good to see with the Four of Wands. So you will, as I say, some people could be draining, but there will be others that there's an energetic exchange. You probably vacillate if you are aware of things like the Myers-Briggs typology, and one of the things in it, it's got different personality preference styles, and one of them is about extrovert and introvert. And extrovert is not necessarily the person who's the life of the party, and introvert somebody who's really shy. It's more about extroverts get energy from somebody else. So there's a bit of that there. And introverts need time out to get energy for themselves. So I think you are probably a little bit of both. And that's partly, I think, because you sort of can so easily spiritually move between the realms. Sometimes you will draw energy from others, so don't be so alone all the time that you aren't seeing people, because a large part of your spiritual mission, pile one, is connecting with others, healing others, creating something new in that space, I believe. But equally, you do need, so it is a balance between that. You also naturally draw people to you because of that. You sense, as I said before, you're the person in a friendship circle or in work who people come to. You are naturally the peacemaker. You are naturally the person who calms situations and can also inspire people, because you do have a lot of inspiration. Your hope and your sense of renewal and regeneration does inspire people. So it's a combination of healing, taking people through shadow, and then inspiring the new regeneration. The cycle of a caterpillar going into the cocoon, changing, and then being the butterfly is a good metaphor for what you do. So given that, I'm going to ask Spirit for some other information. The first thing I'm going to look at is what kind of Kabbalah angel energy is potentially around you. I'll put that there. All right, so this has brought up two angels from the Kabbalah. The first is that I picked out was Uriel, and it's the angel of flame. So that's picking up what I saw there in the Four of Wands, that sense of connection, warmth, the fire of the Negredo in the alchemical process, the transformative side of things. It really brings in a changing energy, an inspiring energy. Some of you with that may channel a certain amount through creativity as well. So some of my pile one may find if you write poetry or books or you paint or you do something like that, or music, that there is channeling of something that comes through from the other realms with that. It's quite inspired on that sort of level and will be very engaging with people. The other side of it is angel of visions, Remiel. So you may see things sometimes. You may be clairvoyant. You may be into reading cards yourself and you get visions and images, or it may just come from that time when you're asleep or when you're on your own, where you get a sense of what's coming, a kind of early distant warning if it's an issue that you need to deal with, or even just that part of that inspiration. So there's a lot of inspiring energy about you, pile one, as well as that natural healing energy. But it's all part of a cycle for you. It's like understanding the issue, gently taking people, yourself through transformation, and then having the vision for the new world. So I'm going to also ask Spirit about how this might manifest. So I'm using a particular oracle deck that shows how these sort of energies tend to manifest. Okay. Well, that's pretty clear. That's saying wisdom and magic. And what I like about it, pile one, is that what it suggests is that what you're getting through the interdimensional, the divine sort of inspiration and support and energy and the magic that you bring into it is something that you bring wisdom to. One of the things that is very, very tricky, I think, around spiritual stuff is that there can be times where we don't use our spiritual gifts to our highest good or the highest good of others, and that causes all sorts of karmic issues for ourselves, plus also energetic problems. It was highly unlikely it was going to be the case when you had that card to start with, but it's possible. And one of the things that I have put into the intention of this reading with Spirit is that if that's an issue, if either someone suppresses their gifts or if they potentially haven't worked out the morality around it, that I might get some reverse tarot cards, and I didn't get that with you. And then I got wisdom. So I think there's a very, very clear message here that you don't come to this lightly. You have really thought through the material impact, the impact on others, the impact on your own soul, and as such you manifest magic. So it's very, very positive, and very powerful. You are not a young soul, you're an old soul, one, and you really do understand this. I wouldn't be surprised if quite a lot of the people who come to this do work in this sort of realm in some way, and really resonate to that sense of the transformative alchemical journey. So I'm going to ask for a closing message from Spirit, just to almost put the full stop on this and say, go forth and use your healing nature and your great wisdom. So let's see what Spirit would say as a closing comment on your spiritual gifts, pile one. And it's talking about insight. So that brings all those elements together. It's that sense of connection with others. It's the deep sleep delta energy of going right within the soul and connecting to other dimensions. It picks up the wisdom. It picks up the visions. But it also, the insight to bring it into material make the material choices of the Two of Pentacles and to bring things into material being with the Page of Pentacles. But there is also, if you are a creative person, there is major insight in what you create. It is channeled on some level. But I do think for many of you, as I say, it's really around healing and alchemy. But with that angel there, it could also be manifesting creatively. Whatever it is, Pile 1, you're very well developed in all of this, and I think you probably know it. But if you didn't, and you want to explore things to really bring this out, I would suggest looking at alternative and spiritual healing modalities. I would suggest alchemy. I would suggest anything around manifestation, but particularly that comes from change and shadow work and so forth. And also just sitting down and writing some stuff or painting something or whatever and seeing what channels through creatively. But I do think most of you are probably well on your path anyway. But for those who aren't, that's the suggestion I'd have to bring out your spiritual gifts. I hope that resonated for you, Pile 1. And if so, as always, I'm asking you to like the video, and if you haven't subscribed already, to do so. I'd love to hear any comments on this in the comments section. If you did Pile 1, maybe let me know, and whether you're already on that path or whether you feel that resonates for you. It would be really interesting to hear. And beyond that, I hope I see you in future Pick a Card readings. Welcome, Pile 2. To start off this reading, I'm using a card from the White Light Oracle. So that was the one that you chose that had your crystal. And in this case, it had exactly the same image as it did on the backing of the card. So don't think that I haven't turned it over yet. You did actually choose the Beta of Spirit Wolf. And why I wanted to use that was that I think it gives an overarching sense of where and how your spiritual gifts are manifesting in this world, and what the focus is. Spirit Wolf is a lunar energy, so you very much connect to the lunar cycles, the moon and so forth. But it's also really the great mediator, the great problem solver, the one who can come into issues of conflict or concern and create a transition. So you, in some manner, your spiritual gifts help you be the consummate negotiator, peace person. I wouldn't be surprised if many of my Pile 2 may be in some form of social activism or really care about social issues and about resolution and about peaceful resolution, about bipartisan resolution. So the sense of coming in and really looking at an issue, and there's a great deal of wisdom and a great deal of strength in the Spirit Wolf, but it's about really seeing clearly. And I think you can see that even in the eyes of the wolf. They look straight, you look, and so therefore you look straight into an issue. You understand it on a really psychic, spiritual level, and you can problem solve better than most people. So with many of you, you're probably in careers, if you're in work already, along those lines. And if you're not and you're at school or you're younger, you're the person who can bring down the tension in a conflict situation. You're the person who sees clearly. So there's a very strong, potentially clairvoyant type of scenario about this too, the sense of like the energies around this and understanding and seeing to the core of something. So that gives us a little bit of a overarching idea of how and where these spiritual gifts manifest. Let's look at the tarot cards to see a little bit more about the detail of what you bring. Okay, so for a start, I've got 2 major arcana cards here, and so that suggests to me that you are very well developed spiritually, whether you're aware of it or not. It's not something new to you. Major arcana tells me it's something that you've brought in with you, and it's something that's very key to your life. I'm looking and reading the tarot cards in a different way for this sort of reading than I would traditionally for just a normal what's coming type reading, because they mean or they give me a sense of a different suite of information for this type of reading, and I've certainly put that intent into asking Spirit to give the cards within that kind of context. And that's why I'm saying if I got quite a bit of major arcana, the intent around that was to be able to say, yes, that tells me. So I'll put those so that you can see a little bit better, because you've got 2 major arcana there. That tells me that this is not new to you. And this tells me that it is part of your life purpose. It is part of your life purpose to do this. Now, the cards themselves suggest to me a few things. Firstly, the Devil and the Chariot card, as you may know, the Devil is often about things being bound up, conflict, confusion, shadows. So that very much connects to that sense that you really see through that. You see where old ideas, propaganda, any of that sort of stuff is getting in the way of truth. You're very clear. You may sometimes, pile 2, feel a little bit alone for that reason. We do live in a world where with the media and echo chambers that are created by where you get your sources of information and so forth, it can be a little bit lonely to be someone who sees clearly as opposed to just following the path. You do not just follow a designated path. You see clearly. You are about the truth. And you're also about liberating that in some way. But I feel that you do it a lot in a very pragmatic level of problem solving, of getting to the core of something. You also balance emotions and high energy very, very well. Some of my pile 2, you may well be in some sort of therapeutic role with that. So I get on one level kind of political, social activism, social issues. On the other hand, I get potentially therapeutic, helping people deal with shadow, deal with addiction, deal with any of the sort of things that bind people up, because you have worked out the core of something. You get to the core of it very, very accurately and very, very quickly, pile 2. And you shift material blockages. So I think that it manifests as shifting, as I say, something as a material blockage. If you're dealing with someone, if you were in this sort of work, for instance, like reading cards or a spiritual advisor, then you would help people deal with shadow, deal with the energetic blockages that they have so that they can manifest more of what they want. So you definitely do that. It also, because the Pentacles have come up here, you are someone who does your spiritual stuff in a very material way. That's why I feel like in many cases, my pile 2, it manifests as being a leader and a problem solver in a very material way. You also transmute energy that is directed in a less than positive direction. So as I say, if people are around you, or if you've ever sort of like been thinking about what matters to you, where it is binding up and causing, as I say, addictions or kind of obsessions or anything like that, and any kind of emotional disturbance, you can cut through and help bring into the manifest world something that's more balanced and something that is not as obsessive. And there is a kind of, you are drawn, I think, pile 2, obsessive people come around you quite a bit. You probably have to deal with it. You probably find people get obsessed with you, to be frank, as well, because there's something about that energy that people who have that need, who are feeling less stable than you, are drawn to. So you need to process that energy for yourself as well too, so you don't take it on, but you really clear blockages. And you clear for yourself, if you're trying to materially manifest something, not to go down a path which is about selfishness or about taking or having something at the expense of others. You understand, I would say you've gone through lifetimes where you've really learnt that lesson about the fact that just thinking manifestation on its own without understanding the interrelationship of us all and the impacts of us having something compared to someone else, having some balance in that. So having a lifestyle that you want and you deserve for your effort and your skills and your heart, but not at the expense of others. You really have a very finely tuned understanding of that, and you can help other people with it, with the gifts that you have. But it's all about sight. It's all about seeing things very clearly and not getting tied up in some of the more fantastical things that our strange modern media world would have us follow. So I'm going to put out another couple of tarot cards from a different deck just to see if there's any more information about the way these things manifest before we look at some oracle cards for advice from the divine about what support is there for you, and how to really work with this. Okay, so you've got the High Priestess and you've got the Page of Swords, and the Page of Swords is reversed. Now, in preparing for this reading, I put the intent into the reading and the connection with the spirit guides for this, that reversals are not about bad things. They are either about suppressed energy around something, or they're about an awareness of and dealing with when things can be, spiritual gifts can be used in a way that's not to your highest good. Now, you have the High Priestess, so that shows that natural ability. It really aligns with the fact that you've got 2 major arcana here. You're not new to this, pile 2. The very fact probably that you came to this reading is an indication of that, because you are interested in this and you've put the work into doing it. So I don't believe that you are going to manifest this energy in the wrong way, but you know when people are. And you know through sight, through thought, through the air element, you can see the flaws in a philosophy. You're the sort of person who can say about the most base level kind of manifestation things that are talked about within the spiritual community, where some of that is shallow or not helpful, because it's not balanced enough with what we bring to the world, what we share with others, and then what we manifest. So you've got that balance right, and you can see through it if it's not, if the balance isn't there. So you really get that on a clear level, and that's why you can manifest things into the world with maybe more ease than most people. You understand the reciprocal balance that's there, and you very much connect into the hidden mysteries through your sight. It's through sight, it's through thought, it's through philosophy. You're almost someone who potentially in a past life may have pursued a very ascetic spiritual life, like a Tibetan monk or something along those lines. It's that kind of feeling of someone who very much connected from the crown chakra and to some degree from the third eye chakra to the divine, and that was the key thing, to understand that, to get that channel through. So I'm going to ask the divine to give me some more information for you from the Kabbalah. So this could be around the Sephiroth, or it could be around angels of the Kabbalah, just to sort of see what else watches over you in this, because you do have to walk a fine line here. You're very, very aware of it, pile 2. Even if you're someone who's come here and you haven't been consciously aware that you've developed this because you've developed it in other lives, you will have been a very fair person, and you would have had a really good radar for when people were not being honest, very clear sight around that sort of thing. But I think many of you are very well aware of this and are working in the thing, at least personally, if not some of you potentially professionally. So let's see what energy is coming from there. Okay, so you've got 2 angels. The first one is Cushiel, and this is the angel of punishment. Yeah, you definitely see through rubbish. You see through people who are full of it, to be frank. And you probably don't have a lot of tolerance for it, and you probably shouldn't. You put your energy and your support and your problem solving to people who have good heart. You have an understanding that the divine will look after the rest, that it is for the divine to mete out anything karmically that somebody brings to them. But you're also very aware of that you have to have that balance right so that your karma is fine. So you align to that energy because you understand that it is for the divine to do, and you trust in that. But it doesn't stop you from wanting in the material world to relieve and reduce those blockages and to have clarity and honesty. And then you have Gabriel, who's the angel of heralds, as your connection. And it's interesting, Gabriel looks over or is the ruler of Yesod or Hesod, which is the second last of the Kabbalah Sephiroth. So it's the one that is connected to Malkuth, which is earth. So it is the connection point to the divine. And Gabriel, amongst other things, watches over prophecy. So there is clear sight. You can see what certain patterns of behaviour are going to bring about. You're very clear on that, pile 2. So let's see what that looks like in terms of what really manifests in your life with these sorts of spiritual gifts. Okay, so we've got prosperity and rebirth. So I think for the first part, the prosperity is really picking up that you can manifest because you've got the balance right. You understand why some people, when they try to do this, if they're not thinking through the whole and how they interrelate, why that isn't working. You've got that right. You can bring prosperity. And rebirth is around being able to transform and create something new and real for yourself. I think some of my pile too, this awareness has been a bit hard won. You may well have been in a difficult sort of childhood, or I think many of you have not come from privilege or money in any sense, or you may have suffered reversals in the early part of your life around that, but you've had that clarity to understand where that's coming from and what's created that. So I think for many of you, there's been, a more recent revelation around all that to you, and you are in the process of manifesting the life that you want, but it is like a rebirth. This is telling me that for many of my pile too, you haven't come into an easy life, and maybe you chose not to, pile two. Maybe you chose to come into maybe some form of sort of cultural background or race background that does suffer from the propaganda and the myths and the biases and the racism or whatever it might be. And you did that deliberately because it really quickly reminded you. Because when we come back into our life, in a sense, in some ways we've forgotten everything. I mean, some people argue that children are connected and still have it, and as you grow older, and that talents are things that are from building up in the past. And I think there's truth to that, but it's not like we come in and we go, I can remember all my lives and I can remember everything that came. So you may have consciously said, I will go into some challenge of some form. If it wasn't sort of racial or economic, then it was possibly just being that bit different to other people and having to go through, some stress at school around that. But whatever it is, you are in a cycle of rebirth because you have brought this energy through. You do, on some innate level, understand that balance. So I'm going to ask Spirit for a closing out message to sort of be the last sort of piece of information, bring it all together, whatever Spirit thinks needs to be said to really help you. You're well on your way in any way, but just that last final message to close out the reading for pile 2. And we've got nourish. I think that's really interesting on many levels. I think it is saying, this is picking up this energy, that because of that work that you do, that understanding that you have and the commitment you have to truth, there is prosperity coming through for you. You are nourishing yourself, you are nourishing your soul, but in doing it, you are also nourishing the earth. And if you see here, this is the sort of divine energy, that knowledge that's coming through, that's channeled through you. You are also nourishing the earth. So know, pile 2, that whatever you do, whether it's a major job around this that shifts the political spectrum, or whether it's just being the person who sees clearly and can help your friends and your community and your family, whatever it is, that is a contribution to nourishing not only yourself but the earth and raising its vibration. So pile 2, I hope that resonated and makes sense to you and that it was helpful information. If so, please like the video, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. And I'd really love to hear in the comments if that does resonate, how that's been in your life, and how you can see yourself working with that energy, because I think pile 2, you're bringing in very important energy for the world, like really important, particularly now. I suspect there's a reason that you were born in whatever generation you're in, so that you're here, because we are in interesting times around belief, politics, media, and just even understanding and getting to the truth. So we desperately need people like you. So I would be very interested to hear in the comments any thoughts you have on that. Other than that, hopefully I'll see you in the next pick a card reading. Welcome pile 3 to your reading. What I'm going to start with is a white light oracle card. It was the card that the pyramid crystal was sitting on that you chose that drew you to this reading, and I'm doing that because I think it shows a kind of touchstone for what the whole energy of the reading is, and something about what your spiritual gifts and your spiritual purpose is in this life. And you've got Sovereign Queen Maeve. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that name correctly. If I'm not and you have that name, I apologise. But she's Queen of the Fairies. It's all about sovereignty. It's about boundaries. It's about being able to protect fiercely if necessary and gently otherwise your people, your tribe. So there's a very strong sense around this, I think, that you have come in to be part of a spiritual tribe and that you are a leader in it, pile 3. You are very protective of others. You have a very strong sense about boundaries, personal, political, economic, whatever it might be, and a very clear sense in being able to lead others and protect others. There's a highly protective energy coming from you. So your spiritual gifts are being at least channeled through the concept of leadership, through the concept of creating a safe and healthy space for your people, your tribe. And I do think this is showing a very strong soul tribe connection. So if you haven't already found people in that, you will in this life. You are destined. There's a reason you're here, pile 3. There's a reason that your tribe is here too. So we'll get a little bit more information when we go through the cards about what that's about. But your gifts are about are very much connected to that soul tribe and very much connected to a basic leadership that you have. And they may manifest in any number of ways. So we'll find out a bit more about that with the tarot. So let's have a look at what your tarot cards are. Wow. Okay. So no wonder you're coming through as a leader, pile 3, because I have 3 major arcana cards. And major arcana cards in this context for this sort of reading are showing that this is not something that's new to you, and it's showing that it's really part of your life path to manifest your spiritual gifts. And it makes sense to me that I'll get 3 out of 3 when somebody is meant to be a spiritual leader. So whether that means you create a following or whether it is say you find your tribe and you simply are part of the really protective side of that, it could be that in any way, or it could be that you move into very material roles and you're a leader, but you're manifesting spiritual beliefs as you do that. Your mode of energy is empathic. Primarily. Well, it's 2 things actually. One is empathy. You are very, very empathic. You are probably literally an empath because there's a difference between just being empathic and being an empath. You sense and pick up the emotional energy around you, and you do have to have boundaries for yourself, which is another thing around that card when that's the case, because you can absorb a lot of energy. So you're the sort of person who may find when you're around your family or friends or workplace and there's a lot of emotional energy about something, you absorb a lot of it. You're probably also telepathic on that level. You probably pick up when friends or family are in a difficult situation. You'd be that sort of person who just thought of someone, had a really strong urge to contact them, and when you do, you'll find that they do need your help, or they're just thinking about you and wanting your ideas and support and so forth, because you are a leader to people. Whether they consciously think about it, you are, and they do respond to you in that way. So there's a very strong empathic side to what you do, but you're also a bit prophetic. And I think part of that is because there's so much heart energy around this and so much emotional balance energy around this. I think the wheel is telling us about prophecy. It's about, you have a sense about when things are moving in a good direction and when reversals are also coming. So you could be someone who studies some form of prophecy. You could read cards like this. You could do astrology. You could be someone who has prophetic dreams, but you really do have a sense about what's coming. For some of you, it may manifest as really great sense of trends. You might be someone who just, like I'll give you a really mundane example, but it really does show up for this sort of energy. You might be someone who sees a new actor or a new musician or whatever, and you have a sense, yes, they're going to be really successful, and then they do turn out to be that way, and often, particularly if it's sort of someone who you wouldn't necessarily have thought would jump to that degree, they do. You just have a sense about who's going to be successful, what's going to work, and that's prophetic. That's a prophetic thing. It's a telepathic connection into the collective and an understanding of the zeitgeist, and that's also part of what makes you a leader. So it's empathy and telepathy and trend seeing and success seeing. Those are the ways that your leadership manifests, and that's a kind of a balance of people understand there's something a little bit different about you. You really do seem to know what's going to happen, and they sense that real empathy and that real emotional support. So I'm going to pull a couple more cards from a different tarot deck just to see if there's any more information about how these things manifest for you, pile 3. Okay, we've got Temperance twice. That's a major thing. You are very much the natural balancer. And it may be hard won, you know, when there's that much major arcana energy, you may well have been born into an environment where things were not fair, things were not in balance. You may have had to do a lot of work on yourself. Some of you may have had even chemical imbalances in your system or something along those lines. It's possible that you've had to deal with that, but you have dealt with it, or you're well on the way to dealing with it. And you may help others. With a double temperance, it's possible that some of my pile 3 are in some sort of healing art. But I think primarily, as I say, it's more around empathy and telepathy. But some of you may be in that, and it's literally about our chemical balancing of the properties of herbs or something along those lines as well. Whatever it is, pile 3, you have a natural ability to manifest. Many of you, through some combination of this, could be making money and establishing yourself maybe as an entrepreneur because of that sense of trends, that real understanding, that sixth sense for what's coming up. But equally, it might be in some form of therapy. You might have studied psychology, for instance, and be doing that for a career. But there's money, and it's manifesting money that allows you to have a great deal of autonomy. And I think part of that is because you are meant, as I say, to lead a group, to have a soul tribe. And so this sense of being able to manifest enough in the world to be seen, to draw those people to you, is going to be important. If you are someone who works in astrology or tarot reading or anything like that, you have a natural ability to bring the material to you through that. But it's about the balance that you bring to things and the fact that people recognize you as a leader. So let's ask another oracle deck, which is one based on the Kabbalah, around the angels in the Kabbalah and the Sephirot in the Kabbalah, about what other information Spirit can give you around your spiritual gifts, pile 3. Okay, so we've got 2 angels from the Kabbalah. The first one is Sahaquiel, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is angel of sky, which is really very much that sense of divine inspiration, information, downloading. This is the telepathy. This is the electrical connection. You really do. You see beyond the realms of time. So you get that information, and you're very quick. Your mind is very, very quick. That might be something to be aware of. Not everybody's mind is as quick as yours. So in leading people and having that empathy, that's good that you have the empathy, actually, because you're not so likely to sort of race through it. But that's the telepathic, straight line connection to the divine, to what's coming, what's outside of the realm of time, what you can see outside the realm of time. You've also got Leliel, which is the angel of night. So I think many of you, a lot of your kind of prophetic information comes in dreams, or even while you're asleep and you're not aware of it. You'll be one of those sort of people who might go to sleep with a bit of a problem or an issue that you're thinking about. In the morning, you have the answer. It's because information has come to you in the night. You're comfortable in the night too. You're comfortable also in the things of the moon and emotion. You're comfortable and that's why you can help people around with your empathy, because it doesn't scare you, it doesn't frighten you. You understand it as just part of the matrix of life. So given that, I want to ask how this really manifests. I mean, we're starting to see that anyway with the pentacles there, in some sort of autonomous business, or just materially being secure, so that you can really concentrate on what's coming through. But let's see what else is the manifestation of your spiritual gifts, pile 3. Okay, that's picking up the Nine of Pentacles. Whether you are there yet, part of what your spiritual gifts will ultimately give you is prosperity, is that sense of being, very financially secure and potentially being able to have luxury. And there's nothing wrong with that, pile 3. It's not, because so much of your energy is put into helping others and the empathy with others. You're never going to go in a direction of misusing it in any way. You didn't get any reversed tarot cards, and one of the things I put in the intent of this is if there's a reversed tarot card, it's either a little bit of a warning to say, look, you have to think about the morality of what you're using with your spiritual gifts, or it's a suppressed spiritual gift. But you didn't get that, so there's no sense in any of this that you would abuse these talents. But I do think a large chunk of it is understanding what's coming. You really, really do have a sense of what's going to be successful, how to present yourself, how to present your tribe, how to help others in that way. You do not underestimate your gift of prophecy because it is profound. So with that, pile 3, I'm going to ask the universe, I'm going to ask the spirit guides for just one last closing message to bring all this together about how best to use your spiritual gifts. Anything else that the spirit guides and the universe want to tell you about those at this time? Okay, and it's saying let go. So maybe some of my pile 3, you're sort of aware of this, but you don't trust it. Or you get messages and you get thoughts, but you don't act upon it because you think, oh, that's just a thought, or I'm just sort of like imagining or spitballing here. Pay attention to it. Even if you're not sure, start to write this stuff down, and you're going to see a pattern where you will write, and then you'll get that confidence. And so for some of my pile 3, you need to develop the confidence in your own prophetic talent. I think you probably know your empathic one because people are probably always coming to you. But also that's the other message I think that Spirit's telling me about this with let go is that when, as I said at the beginning, when you're that empathic, you can draw a lot of energy into yourself, you can feel a lot. You need to learn about how to let that energy go once you've experienced it, to understand that it's not yours and to let it go so that it doesn't weigh you down. This sort of has a sense of like swords from the tarot, that sense of like speed, and you do work at a very fast pace of mind, pile 3. So it's important not to carry that, not to get slowed down by the energy of others. You need to, and I think if you just sort of understand it, you use that sense of what is you and what isn't you to disconnect from that emotional energy after you've understood it. A lot of this is about understanding for you, but I do think some of you also doubt your spiritual gifts. So I really think start writing some of these things down. Start seeing the pattern. You're going to see the pattern. You're meant to lead in this in some way. But boundaries, as I say, is also a thing associated with that card. So with that amount of energy coming through to you and that amount of information coming through to you, no matter how fast your mind is, and it is fast, you will have to let certain things go. But otherwise, it's very positive. So pile 3, I hope that made sense and it resonated for you. If so, please like the video, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. I'd love to see anybody who has time, some feedback in the comments if this does resonate with you and how you're sort of working through that, whether you've got to the point that you're confident about it now or whether you're still going through that. It just would be really fascinating. I find how people bring spiritual gifts into the world, such an interesting thing. I'd love to sort of, interact with you and get a sense of whether this resonates. So if you have time, please do leave a comment as well. But otherwise, hopefully I will see you in a future Pick a Card reading.